Today we will be going over the Before You Bikepack the Marcher Castles Way, a 180-mile bikepacking route through the historic borderlands of England and Wales, a cycling UK route that takes you deep into the Shropshire Hills, past ancient castles, over rolling countryside, along woodland trails and through old market towns. In this video, I'll try to give you some first-hand knowledge from riding it recently, so if you're planning to take it on, you will know what to expect. From which bike is best for the terrain, how the wild camping is like, and what the food and water resupply options are like along the way. I'll also give this route a difficulty rating out of 10, with 10 being extremely tough, and my overall rating based on how much I personally enjoyed it and what I thought of the route. 1 being don't bother, and 10 being up there with the best thing since sliced bread. The Marcher Castles Way is a cycling UK route that takes you on an off-road adventure through the historic borderlands of England and Wales, known as the Welsh Marches. This was once a turbulent frontier, home to centuries of conflict, power struggles and castle building. And this route traces that history through some of the most scenic parts of Shropshire. The ride officially starts and ends in Shrewsbury, looping through a landscape shaped by medieval power. You'll pass through towns and villages like Ironbridge, Ludlow, Clun and Knighton, and weaving between the Shropshire Hills, area of outstanding natural beauty. It's not one continuous trail, but a mix of different types of terrain and ways, from canal paths and bridleways to grassy hillsides, old railway lines, forest tracks and back country lanes. There's a bit of everything. You'll definitely want a GPS device for navigation or navigation app, as the route changes surface and trail type quite often. At just over 180 miles with a fair bit of climbing, it's not the longest route out there, but don't underestimate it. The hills here can be steep, over 15,000 feet of elevation gain. If you're into routes that blend historical landmarks, great panoramic views, this one really delivers, especially if you're into castles. If you are after a bikepacking adventure that mixes historic towns, rolling hills and some seriously tough climbing, then the Marcher Castle Way might be just what you're looking for. This route isn't remote in the way that some Scottish or Welsh routes are, but that doesn't mean it's easy. The climbs are relentless at times, and while a lot of the trails is on wide bridleway or double track, the constant up and downs definitely add up, especially if you're carrying full gear. This route is probably best suited to riders who have a decent level of fitness and are comfortable spending long days in the saddle. While the trails themselves aren't super technical, the effort required is still high. There are sections that are rideable for experienced off-road riders, but some people will find themselves pushing more often than expected. There are a few rocky climbs, grassy hills and uneven descents, some of which do require focus and a bit of technical skill. Although you will spend most of your time on the off-road trails, you will still have to use quiet country lanes. They are quiet, but you might encounter the odd car from time to time, and the lanes are narrow, so careful on them descents. You'll pass through some stunning countryside, forests, quiet canal paths and towns full of character. The regular access to village shops and even cafes make it much more manageable from a logistics point of view, so you're not having to be fully self-sufficient the whole time. If you like a challenge but don't necessarily want to be out in the wilderness for days, and you enjoy a route packed with history and scenery, then this one's worth taking on. Just be ready for the climbing, it's not one to underestimate. If you have 3 to 4 days spare for some adventure cycling and a GPS unit for mapping, then you might want to give this route a go. Being a loop, you can ride the Marcher Castles Way in either direction, and I did look at the elevation profile before setting off and thought the reverse might actually be the better option. But having now ridden it, I do think the official direction is probably the right call. The climbs in this direction are generally a bit smoother and more rideable, which definitely helps when you are grinding uphill with gear. The descents might be a little rougher going this way, but honestly that's what you want. It's much more enjoyable riding the rougher stuff downhill than having to push or struggle your way up it. So while both ways are totally doable, I'd recommend sticking with the official direction unless you've got a very specific reason to reverse it. It flows well and the tough sections feel a bit more manageable this way. I took this on with a flat bar gravel bike running 50mm tyres and a 38 1146 gearing setup. Overall, it handled the route pretty well. There wasn't much I couldn't ride or didn't feel comfortable riding, but I'm not gonna lie, there were definitely a few climbs where I'd have loved an extra gear or two. Some of the climbing is steep and just keeps on coming, so having something easier to spin would make those moments a bit more manageable. I tackled this in pretty dry conditions. Even though I had some rain during the trip, the trails had been baked dry for a couple of weeks beforehand, so most of them were hard packed and even dusty in places. In that kind of weather, a big tired gravel bike can be a solid option, but I'd recommend only using a gravel bike if you are used to riding rougher tracks already with a bit more experience. That said, for most people, I'd probably recommend going with a hardtail mountain bike. You want something with reliable brakes and the easiest gearing you can get. A lot of the route is wide double track style trails, but that doesn't always mean they're smooth. And when the rain does come, let's face it, in the Shropshire Hills, that's never too far away. A mountain bike's extra grip, comfort and braking power will make a big difference on this route, especially if the trails are a little on the wet side. For most people, I'd recommend a hardtail mountain bike. When it comes to where to sleep along the Marcher Castle Way, you've actually got a lot of flexibility. Whether you're into wild camping, prefer booking a B&B, or wanting something in between like a proper campsite, this route gives you all those options. This route passes through a good number of small towns and villages. While they're not packed with accommodation, most of them have at least a few places to stay, whether it's a small hotel or a pub with rooms. So if you're not into wild camping, or just want a bit more comfort, this route would be fairly easy to do that way. As for wild camping, there are definitely some good options along the route, especially if you're willing to head a bit higher up. Most of the better wild camping spots are on the more exposed side, up on the hills, which means the views can be amazing, but so can the wind. The Shropshire Hills can get pretty blustery, so make sure your tent is up for the job if you're planning to camp up top. Wouldn't want you to get blown away now. There are a few wooded sections that could be useful if you need to get out of the weather, but they are fewer and further apart, so you might need to plan your days a bit more careful to reach them. If wild camping is not really your thing, but you still want to sleep outside, a quick search will show there are quite a few official campsites around the Shropshire Hills too. Basically, whatever your camping style is, this route has you covered. Food and water on this route are fairly easy to manage. You're never really too far from a shop or cafe where you can resupply for the day. Realistically, you are only ever about 30 miles or less between resupply points, which makes this a nice route if you don't want to carry loads of food or water. As long as you've got enough to get you from town to town, you'll be fine. You can filter water along the way, but when I rode it, a lot of the streams and natural sources had dried up. So if you're riding in hot or dry conditions, it's a good idea to carry a bit extra just in case. There are plenty of climbs on this route, and being dehydrated will make them feel a lot worse. Plan ahead a bit and top up when you can. This is one of Cycling UK's tougher routes, but not because it's overly technical, Most of the riding is on wider double track and smoother gravel paths, with some rougher sections here and there, especially on the climbs. If you got some off-road experience, you'll probably find most of the terrain very rideable, especially in dry conditions. But beginners or anyone not used to uneven trails might find a few sections a bit more challenging, especially when the ground's wet or rutted. The real difficulty comes from the climbing. This route has a lot of it, long steady climbs and short punchy ones, and sometimes long and punchy, often one after the other. It can feel pretty relentless, and with a fully loaded bike, it will definitely start to add up. You'll feel those climbs in your legs by the end of each day. That said, one of the things that makes this route more manageable is how often you pass through small towns or villages. You are never really too far from civilization, which means food and water and even a bed for the night are never too far away if you need them. It has a really good balance, physically demanding but not logistically overwhelming. You don't need to carry days worth of supplies, and that can make a huge difference on long rides like this. Other things to keep in mind: weather can change quickly in the Shropshire Hills, and wind can make some of the exposed sections tough going. But if you get a good weather window, the trails are most likely fast rolling and dry, especially in the summer. The climbs are tough, but the scenery is amazing. Tough climbs, but the views make it worth it. So overall, I'd give this route a 7.5 out of 10 for difficulty. It's one of the more physically demanding routes Cycling UK has put out, mainly because of the hills and the sustained effort needed across multiple days. But with the right setup and a bit of fitness, it's definitely a rewarding one to take on. Maybe not if you are a beginner. Cycling UK has some easier routes to choose from. Overall, I think the Marcher Castles Way might just be my favourite out of all the Cycling UK routes I've ridden. It's definitely one of the tougher ones in terms of physical effort. The amount of climbing adds up quickly, and some of it is pretty relentless. But it's the kind of climbing that when you make it to the top of the hill, rewards you with spectacular views over the Shropshire Hills. Most of the time at least. Almost every hill rewards you with a great descent or a stunning view at the top, and more often than not, a castle waiting just around the corner. That's what makes this route stand out. You're constantly pedaling through history, with ruins and ancient landmarks scattered all the way along. It gives the rides a real sense of purpose. It's not just about getting from A to B, suffering along the terrain. It's about discovering the stories hidden in these hills. The riding itself is a great mix. While the climbs are tough in places, most of the trails are wide and rideable, with only a few rougher sections that might catch out the less experienced riders. There are some brilliant descents that let you open things up and enjoy the flow. Even when your legs are aching, you're still motivated to push on just to see what's next. What really helps this route is how it links together. You're rarely too far from a village or a small town, which makes planning resupplies or even a night in a B&B a lot easier if needed. That takes some of the pressure off and makes it more accessible than some of the more remote routes out there, while still giving you that remote, adventurous feeling along the way. So for me, with the mix of demanding but fun riding, great views, loads of history, and that sense of exploring something really unique, I'd give this a solid 9 out of 10. Hopefully this gives you a better idea of what to expect from the Marcher Castles Way and helps you decide if it's the kind of adventure you want to take on. If you've got any questions about the route, feel free to drop them in the comments. And if you're heading out there yourself, have a great adventure, and remember, keep smiling and enjoy the adventure.